Welcome back to the Denver Broncos franchise, and this is going to be a little bit of a different episode because this is not a game episode, obviously, because if you watched the last episode, it was Super Bowl 50 against the Carolina Panthers. If you haven't seen that, I would highly recommend to go watch that before you watch this. And I will wait for people who have not seen that a few seconds before. Go click on that because I'm about to say what happened in that episode. So, all right, if you haven't seen that, go watch that. All right. So we did beat the Carolina Panthers with a last-second drive led by Peyton Manning. And speaking of Peyton Manning will no longer be a part of this team because he has retired. He has gone out on top. Peyton Manning has won the Super Bowl and retired. So, we are going to be left in a little bit of a sticky situation here because heading into the offseason, we only have a limited amount of money we can spend, and we have a lot of people who are going to be heading into free agency, and we do not have exactly a sure quarterback situation because we just have Brock Osweiler, and we need to re-sign him. So if we re-sign him, even then, we kind of need to have somebody who can step in to replace him if we decide to go with Osweiler, or if we draft somebody and then have Osweiler as the backup. We need to have somebody to be a backup because you can't have a guy who's unproven and have no backup. And really can't even have a guy who is proven and have no backup because look at the Dallas Cowboys. They have Romo, no backup. Look what they do. It's definitely something you need to have. So, before we hop into the re-signing and everything, our Denver Broncos finished the season 3rd in total offense, 4th in passing yards on offense, 3rd in points per game, and then on the defensive side of the ball, we are 4th in overall defensive yards allowed, 1st in rushing yards allowed, which just means we're not 1st in the amount of yards, meaning like we gave up the most, meaning we allowed the least, so we're 1st because we're the best. That's what that means. And then points allowed, we are also 1st. So our defense was pretty good, if you do say so myself. And then now let's move into the awards. MVP was Aaron Rodgers, and Coach of the Year, of course, our coach, Tony D'Amato. Tony D'Amato from New England Sunday. He wins Coach of the Year as he wins the Super Bowl in his first season, and of course, he will be coming back for the rest of the series because he is our coach, and, well, we're not going to change that. So, Tony D'Amato, Coach of the Year. And now, as we get into the rest of these awards, you'll see that we have a couple guys who have won awards, but I feel like, I'm not sure, but I think that the game, sees that Peyton Manning retired, and, the game doesn't have the intelligence to be like, okay, Peyton Manning just played that season. Now, he just played that season, he put up all those stats, but since he retired, we're going to remove all those stats from this current season. And I think that's what they do, because I don't think it has, the intelligence to be like, alright, well, he played, he's no longer in the league, but he did play that season, so his stats should still be there. I don't think Madden has, the intelligence to keep that. So I don't think that CJ Anderson should have won Offensive Player of the Year. I feel like Peyton Manning should have, because, and same with Best Quarterback, I feel like he should have won that, because I don't think Andrew Luck was a better quarterback than Peyton Manning in the season. I believe his stats were substantially worse than Manning, so I feel like he definitely got gypped out of that because of the whole retirement thing and Madden being dumb. But anyways, Offensive Player of the Year, C.J. Anderson. Best Running Back, C.J. Anderson. Demarius Thomas. Best Receiver, Emmanuel Sanders, finished 5th in that. Louis Vasquez from Texas Tech, won Best Offensive Lineman, our offensive lineman. Aqib Talib, who is one of my personal favorite NFL players, Best Defensive Back award, and then Brendan McManus got Best Kicker award. He is our ridiculously good kicker out of Temple University. And now let's move things over to the re-sign phase, and then eventually into free agency. But first things first, before we re-sign anybody, I felt like we needed to make some cap room, and in order to do that, we went out and we released a veteran player who I feel like we could release and then still have production from his position considering who we have as his backup, and that is DeMarcus Ware. DeMarcus Ware is getting up there in age. I feel like he definitely helped us out that season. He had I believe it was the game-sealing interception in the Super Bowl, and he had a pretty good season, if I do say myself, but he is getting up there in age. He's going to get slower. He's going to get worse. And I feel like it's time to move on from DeMarcus Ware and start concentrating on the first-round pick, who really did not play the entire season, Shane Ray. So Shane Ray out of Missouri is now going to be our starting right outside linebacker. I felt comfortable releasing DeMarcus Ware to get a couple $1 million in cap space, to free up a couple $1 million in cap space, since we had Shane Ray as backup. And yeah, so now in the re-sign phase, first thing we did was we locked up Von Miller. Von Miller, 6 years, $87 million. I did not franchise tag him. I paid that man, unlike the actual Broncos. So then Brandon Marshall, another middle linebacker, we signed to a 6-year, $54 million deal. I felt like he was a pretty good asset to our team. And then we also went out and signed Brock Osweiler. Re-signed him to a 3-year deal, $14 million total. Not very much money if you do look at that, really. Definitely not what he signed with the Houston Texans in real life, that's for sure. And Brock Osweiler is going to be with our team, whether that's a backup, whether that's a starter. That'll be determined as we head into the season. Ronnie Hillman was re-signed for 3 years, $4.6 million. Total, which is only like a little over $1 million per year. So Ronnie Hillman, definitely a bargain to sign there, as I felt that he was a pretty good returner for us. And then I feel like since, well, we are letting C.J. Anderson walk, unfortunately, because I'm not a fan of giving running backs money in today's NFL. That is definitely not something I agree with. I feel like teams that give running backs absurd amount of money and teams that draft running backs in the first round are kind of dumb, to put it lightly, because I just feel like the Patriots are pretty much a prime example of this. You can really pick up anybody, and if you have a good offensive line and you just have a guy who can find holes, doesn't matter where he's drafted, doesn't matter how talented he is, as long as he can find holes, he's quick, he's good enough to find holes, you're going to have a good running back. So I feel like that's definitely something, and I feel like we have a good enough offensive line and a good enough offense of passing attack to complement that running back, so I feel like we don't really need to re-sign Anderson to a big contract. So C.J. Anderson was let walk. Danny Trevathan, I tried to re-sign him to bring back him as my second middle linebacker because we play a 3-4 defense, obviously, but he did not come back. So C.J. Anderson was not interested in our offer, so he's going to try to test free agency. And Vernon Davis, the veteran tight end, we have like three. When Vernon Davis was on the roster, we had like 385. Like I think it was Owen Daniels and Virgil Green were like both 82 plus, and then Vernon Davis was like an 88 or a 90 or something like that. And then we even had like I think his name is John Lewerman from Ohio State, who was a rookie tight end who I feel like could be a good asset to have. And I just felt like we had overkill at tight end, and we never really played situations where there was multiple tight ends because we had Manning and he was always under in the shotgun. But now we have different quarterbacks. I feel like we can have multiple tight ends, but we're not going to bring back Davis because I feel like having 3 insanely good tight ends is kind of overkill, and we don't need to commit that much money into Davis when we already have 2 solid tight ends, Virgil Green and Owen Daniels. And now moving things to the free agency period, first thing we did was we went out and signed a couple receivers to be depth receivers because we did lose Benny Fowler in free agency. He did not want to come back. He was not interested in our offer. I tried to re-sign him, but he was not interested, and I felt like, hey, screw him. He's not very good anyway. Well, he's good, but I mean, he's not exactly overall-wise, and I feel like we could definitely do better in getting some guys who are more reliable, maybe. And first 2 guys we went out and signed were receivers to be like a 3rd, 4th, or like 4th, 5th receivers, because we still have Latimer, so these guys are going to be competing for like those bottom 3 receiver roles. Chris Hogan out of Monmouth, which is a New Jersey college, the same college that Miles Austin went to. They're actually a Division III football program, fun fact. They're actually also known in basketball, college basketball, for their bench celebrations. Fun fact there, that's the same team. So Chris Hogan, we signed him to a 3-year, $2.85 million per year deal. The other guy we signed was Jaron Brown, or Jerome Brown, Jerron, something like that. 3 years, $2.93 million per year. He's, like I said, him, Latimer, and Hogan will be competing for those like bottom 3 receiver roles because you will see that we picked up somebody else to be a slot guy. So we also went out and signed an offensive lineman because I felt like we needed to improve on the guard position because we only really had Louis Vasquez, and then we had just some scrub on the left guard. But now we improved that with Ricciard Incognito. He's definitely going to be a stopgap for 1 year because he's getting up there in age, and I don't want to sign him to a long-term deal. So we signed him to a 1 year, $3.85 million deal to be a stopgap at that left guard position. And I feel like he's going to definitely help out the offensive line. On defense, we didn't really improve too much because I felt like I wanted to draft defense and not sign defense. And really, we signed a couple like depth guys. We picked up Steven Means, an outside linebacker, 2 years, $1.65 million. We picked up 2 backup safeties and Raphael Bush, backup free safety, 2 years, $2.85 million per year. And then David Brutton, who initially I didn't think I was going to re-sign, so I let him walk into free agency, but I was like, let's just bring him back to be a 1 year deal, to be a backup strong safety. So we did that 1 year, $3.25 million. He's going to be backing up TJ Ward, and last year TJ Ward got hurt and Brutton played a pretty damn good year. So I feel like Brutton is definitely going to be an asset to bring back in that strong safety backup spot. And then this next signing is kind of like a joke signing, not really though. Just to be like a third string, I feel like. I know in Madden you don't have to have 3 quarterbacks anymore. My friends are always giving me shit about that I always sign 3 quarterbacks in like every league I do. I just like having quarterbacks for whatever reason. But I definitely am going to be drafting a quarterback, as you'll see. But to pick up a third quarterback, I picked up Robert Griffin III because he was in free agency. He was cheap, so I figured, hey, why not? We might release him in the regular season. We might not. We might keep him as a third string. You never know. And then the final signing of free agency we made was we picked up a running back to complement Ronnie Hillman, since I feel like we're definitely going to have a multiple-headed attack in the backfield when Ronnie Hillman is definitely not exactly built that to be a carry-the-load type of guy. So we picked up Roy Halou, former Washington Redskin, former Oakland Raider, and he is now a Denver Bronco to a 2-year, $2.25 million per year. So Roy Halou is now going to be complimenting Ronnie Hillman in the backfield. And now let's move on to the NFL Draft. So, first round, we picked a quarterback. Of course, we are the Denver Broncos, and we just won the Super Bowl, so we have the last pick of the first round, so it's basically a second-round pick. So I went out and I picked up a guy who was projected to go in the second round, like early second round, I think it was, or early to mid-second round, but he was a first-round talent. And that is Taurus Johnson, quarterback out of LSU. So he's basically Voodoo Tatum. And Taurus Johnson, we picked him. He is going to be competing for that starting quarterback position with Brock Osweiler. And then in the second round, we took a running back out of Tennessee, Peyton Manning's alum, D'Ambro Shepard, I believe it's Shepard. D'Ambro Shepard out of Tennessee. He's going to be competing with, I feel like we're going to have, we're definitely going to have a multi-headed attack, but I feel like one of those guys could eventually emerge as, the main guy out of Halou, Hillman, and now D'Ambro Shepard, the rookie out of Tennessee. In the third round, I wanted to improve on the defensive tackle position that we had last year, because when we played nickel, it was Sylvester Williams and then Darius Kilgo, who I felt didn't really do much. Wasn't a very good defensive tackle. Williams had a couple sacks, had a couple big plays, but Kilgo wasn't exactly impressive. I didn't really want to have him starting in that nickel second defensive tackle spot. So we went out and we drafted Jabril Jeffrey. It turns out he is a pretty damn good defensive tackle. There was a couple guys I was looking at here for defensive tackle, but I decided to go with the Penn State guy because, I don't know, I just felt like they're known for defense, so I felt like, hey, let's try to get him. We got him. He's pretty good. So he's I'd say that's a third-round steal. Jabril Jeffrey at a Penn State defensive tackle. Fourth round, we went out and drafted a right tackle or offensive tackle. He can play both. When I draft offensive lineman, I'm not like, all right, he's a left guard, so he can only play left guard. It's kind of like I draft a tackle, thinking like maybe he could play left tackle if that's where I need him. I could shift him over to that position. But, so offensive tackle, Shane Brandon out of Stanford. He's going to be just a backup guy to back up one of the tackle positions at first. Maybe he'll start eventually, but right now he's just a backup. Fifth round, we traded our fifth-round pick this year for the Chicago Bears' fifth-round pick next year. Why did I pick the Chicago Bears? Well, because they were just god-awful this season, so I figured, hey, why not try to take their pick and get an early fifth-rounder, where it's basically a fourth-rounder. And And that was pretty much it for the draft. Then we traded away our 6th pick, and the 7th pick, we drafted Mr. Irrelevant, some middle linebacker out of like Oklahoma, I think, named like Javori Scott. He's probably going to get cut. He's not very good. And then heading into the offseason or the preseason, there's always those guys that fall through the cracks and are pretty good in free agency that you can sign to 1-year cheap deals. And it just so happens that the middle linebacker we tried to bring back, Danny Trevathan, was one of those free agents. So Danny Trevathan brought back on a 1-year deal for $3 million, and he's going to be that second middle linebacker again. So he's back on the team. We signed a couple defensive ends to be backups and compete for maybe that starting left end spot since we let Derek Wolfe walk, and we need to have somebody compete for that. Right now it's Vance Walker, but we could have we signed Kendall Reyes. I feel like he could compete for that spot. He is a left end, 1 year, $740K we signed him to. Or there's former Iowa Hawkeye Carl Klug, however you pronounce it. He signed him to a 1 year, $780K contract. So him, Reyes, and Vance Walker will be competing for that left end spot. And then Josh Gordon, I felt like we needed to sign because he fell through the cracks. And like I said, we do have a young quarterback. It's either going to be Osweiler or Johnson starting, so we're going to have a first-year starting quarterback no matter what. And I feel like it's definitely going to help out a quarterback if we have a very good passing attack to help him along. And I would say Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, and Josh Gordon is a pretty good passing attack. So that'll pretty much wrap things up here for this off-season video, who I signed, who I drafted, who I re-signed, and what our expectations and everything are for the season. And yeah, it's pretty much the questions heading into the season are who's going to start at quarterback, Brock Osweiler or Taurus Johnson. We're going to have to decide that before opening day. It might end up being Osweiler on the first couple weeks, and if he struggles, then Johnson's going right in there. He's going to have a short leash. I'm not going to be very patient with Osweiler probably if I do start him, but if I start Johnson, I'm going to be patient. But I feel like I don't want to just throw the rookie out there, the dogs, into the fire just week one. Just be like, see how you do. And I'm not a fan of that strategy. So, running back, who's it going to be? Right now it's going to be a three-headed attack of Ronnie Hillman, Roy Halou, and D'Ambra Shepard, but who is going to break out as that main number one back? Will it be Halou? Will it be Hillman? Will it be Shepard, the rookie out of Tennessee? And then, like I mentioned, the left end spot. Who's going to emerge as that starting left end spot in the 3-4 defense? Is it going to be Vance Walker, the veteran left end? Is it going to be Kendall Reyes, the guy we signed in preseason? Or is it going to be Carl Klug out of Iowa? Who is it going to be? They're all going to be competing for that spot because we had to replace Derek Wolfe in that left end spot. The right end, of course, is Malik Jackson because we brought him back on a contract. We signed him mid-season. And then, of course, will Shane Ray be able to provide a pass rush on that right side like DeMarcus Ware was able to in Season 1? Shane Ray, of course, our first-round pick in the season heading into this franchise that we started it. So let's see if he'll be able to produce in that right outside linebacker starting position. So with that being said, that's going to wrap things up here for this Denver Broncos franchise offseason. I've been your host, Jersey Born, and I'm saying goodbye.